Hey, so in today's video, I'm going to tell you the secrets from this book in terms of how these Harvard educated doctors were able to reduce the number of injuries and the number of accidents from surgeries by using something that they stole from the aviation industry. So, this book is all about the power of checklists. It sounds so simple and straightforward, but basically, this doctor was able to understand a number of systems within their hospital that they were seeing errors in. And this same entire principle was first applied in the aviation industry after a series of accidents and fatalities in terms of planes crashing, when they discovered that these pilots who are highly trained, had been on 1,000 flights before, would miss one little step in the process of either takeoff or during the flight or during landing. And that one little mistake led to a huge disaster. So in a way, this video is also building off of the kind of the theme of this month, the first video I've done this month. Definitely check it out. But the idea that these small little things can lead to big results. And the power of the checklist allows you to remove all of essentially these broken windows that could happen along the way. And so all of a sudden you get these big results in terms of the results of operations going up. This guy has an incredible TED talk. I highly recommend it as a quick primer. But kind of the mission of this video and this whole channel is the idea of creating reading as ritual. I think it's also on my checklist too. The idea I can spend 10, 15, 20 minutes a day reading. I find that to be part of my checklist today. And that's how this book has also just helped me in terms of the daily activities that I do every day that improve my life, improve my well being, improve my happiness, my joy, and also improve my financial results, the skill sets I'm trying to learn, allow me to grow as an individual, also deepen my faith in terms of my spiritual growth. I mean, there's certain things that I engage in thanks to this book, because if I didn't write it down as a checklist, I probably would have had too big of an ego to say, oh, you know what, I'm going to rely on essentially what I was talking about yesterday in my video from yesterday, but I would rely on memory. And that's what I talked about yesterday with Moonwalking with Einstein and Joshua Foer's book, is the ability to utilize memory in a way where you can memorize something like a 52 deck of cards using a simple tips and tricks that basically were developed thousands of years ago. So let's fast forward to the modern era, and we've got the checklist. So instead of using advanced techniques like the memory palace, it's as simple as writing out a checklist. And how do I use that today? Well, within my old business, I remember when I would onboard a new client, I basically had a series of questions, certain objectives I wanted to tackle, and I made sure that every client or every new member would go through that checklist. And it wouldn't be as simple as them answering questions in one for one, but I would make sure that through that discovery, through the process of getting to know someone, we tackled each of those. And that allowed me to have a more holistic approach. And by developing the checklist on paper, I know it ties back to the longer term goals. I know it ties back to the short term goals. And that checklist became a structure that allowed a lot more freedom. And so that's where that's where I saw a lot of benefit in terms of just onboarding, members, especially when you're dealing with onboarding, hundreds of members within a week, especially to a new site. Having a checklist is just super easy. Same thing he does in this book, where he discovers the power of checklists, and then also kind of a mini case study within the book. And maybe the most valuable part about this whole video is, here's a highly educated doctor. He's now going around to surgeons and other hospitals telling them, hey, you guys need to do this in order to change. You need to change what you're doing, otherwise you're going to have more problems. And I don't know about you, but I feel like in any field, when you have people who are already well established, they're well known, their research is cited in other papers or what have you, it's often very difficult to change the way people are doing things. Even when it presented with the right evidence, it can be difficult for someone to say, oh, I'm wrong, you're right, let's do it your way. And so I think within the book is also just this mini case study of, once you have a good idea, how can I actually drive results and drive an impact and get other people to buy into it? So I feel like within the book, it's almost another case study around that. So without digging too much more into that, I'll just share. For me, I have a couple of checklists that I like to engage in every day, every week, at the end of a month, at the end of a quarter. So I'd encourage you, and I'd love to hear in a comment maybe something that you do every day or every week or every month that you kind of abide by through a checklist. For me, it's simple things that I write down. I usually get to them, but I like to have a checklist so that if I forget at the end of the day, I can squeeze it in and do it. But it's simple things like I like to engage in vocal exercises every day, maybe 10, 15 minutes. Probably will do a separate video on that later. But I find that by engaging in that, I'm able to improve my communication skills, and I find real results when I work on many different teams or I show up in the office. And I find that by being able to communicate more effectively, I'm less in my head. I'm able to see those subtle social cues in terms of, is that person not understanding what I'm saying? Are they about to ask a question? Do I need to step back and clarify something? It allows me to read the room a lot better. And by doing that, again, it all builds on itself, right? By doing that, I'm able to drive projects forward, drive more results, have more joy in the process, less frustration. Um, and again, I think it's all really helpful. So all coming back to the checklist of just making sure I'm doing these vocal exercises every day. That's been a big help for me this last year. Other things like prayer, meditation, things that I normally do each day, but I write them on the checklist just in case. I also have post the video. It's been a big one for me this year. Making sure I just get it done. And also on a weekly side, probably my favorite thing I've added to the checklist. And I don't know. I guess there's a little bit of emotion around sharing these sort of things as a 36-year-old man, but I like to journal every week, maybe 10 minutes, where I write down sort of the previous thoughts from the last week, some results, kind of where I'm at, and I like to spend about the same amount of time, 10 minutes or so, looking back at old journals from a year ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, because I find that that's a great process in terms of getting my thoughts out to paper. And also, if I'm struggling with something today, and then I basically read that I was writing down the same thing a year ago or 3 years ago, it drives an immediate change in my behavior that next week. This thing that I thought was a problem today has actually been recurring for years, and it's sort of a discovery process of kind of how my brain thinks. So it's really easy for me to trick myself. So like putting it down to paper, it's it's sort of staring back at me. So there are these things that I love to do based on this book. And again, I think it's sort of something where it seems so simple and yet it's so effective. So why not use it, right? And I also do it in terms of just like fun things too, right? Like, am I setting up a date night, or am I planning something fun in the future? I love another book called Happiness Advantage. I'll probably talk about that later. But all these different techniques where people who are having fun in their job tend to be successful, and most people sort of think, once I'm successful, then I'll be happy. But that book's whole premise is the idea that it's actually flipped around, where people who are happy tend to do well. And so by doing the checklist again, like I said, it removes that mental clutter. I'm able to just kind of go about my day, and if I forget something, check the checklist, get it done, on to the next. So leave a comment on maybe something that you incorporate in your checklist, or maybe you want to add now and sort of install this process within your life. I'd love to hear if you are incorporating the reading as a ritual, as a habit. I love that's sort of the mission, I think, right now on this channel is moving away from the short form content that we're all bombarded with, and trying to install something that maybe hopefully this video inspires you to check out the book, or at least the TED Talk. I think at least you have a longer form video that's going to dig into something that's going to be life changing. And then also, like the video if you got something out of it, subscribe if you want to hear more content like this. And until next time, peace.